Welcome to Trial to Triumph, hosted by Caleb Johnson, the show about leaning into life's constant testing on your way to realizing your biggest blessings.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph, and I'm very excited to be with you today. Thanks for spending some time and spending it with us. And today we have a very special guest, Matt Drouin. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Caleb.
Yeah, man. Can you just share maybe in a couple minutes just your background story with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as of right now, I'm a full-time real estate investor, but it wasn't always that way. I grew up in Western New York and Rochester, and I'm really going to, talk about some pretty dark stuff in terms of what led up to my why. I had, two parents, my mother and father. My father was a general laborer at Genesee Brewery. My mother was a dialysis nurse working all crazy hours and stuff like that. And there was a constant source of stress in the household, and it was always around money. And it led to my parents ultimately splitting up. And it was always a really source that was lacking. So I developed this obsession with money very early on when I was a kid because I knew that lack of it created so much pain. And so I saw, two really hardworking parents doing everything the right way as a kid. And in my 20s, both my parents passed away. My father died from a heart attack in his sleep. My mother died from terminal cancer. And this was like sort of my really seminal moment of what really changed me as an individual. Both of those events didn't happen at the same time. My mother died when I think I was 21, 22 years old. My father when I was 28, 29. And I really felt like this was God telling me something because I did not have a sense of urgency as a young person. I was kind of a directionless, timid individual. And I had always struggled with self-confidence. I'd always struggled with direction. I was your ADD kid that was, grew up on Ritalin and Adderall in terms of daily doses of those. And I was not so much hyperactive, but I was a daydreamer. And my mind would just drift off while I was at school and even in social settings to other places. So I think that sense of urgency, first off with my mother, was a really sobering experience. There is nothing quite like the experience of holding somebody's hand as they're taking their last breaths. And this was really like, okay, I've been wandering through life. I went to college just because all my friends went there. I didn't really have a strong why behind that. And I saw, my mother just pass away in front of my eyes. And it turns out that possibly that wasn't strong enough to really, really get me, motivated and developing that sense of urgency. But it was my first, aha moment, and was one of the strongest experiences of my life to reminding me that we don't have tomorrow. We don't even have today. So fast forward, I graduated from college and I got a job with a bank. I was a part-time bank teller. It was the best job I could possibly find, being a recent college graduate out of a SUNY Geneseo, which was a liberal arts school with a general business major with no experience. And I just hated that job. I hated standing in one place every day. I grew up in an affluent suburb where my parents basically, put every single penny they had into buying a house to put my brother and I in a good school district, and that's one of the stressors that led to my parents separating. But I always had this inferiority complex. I was in this affluent suburb. I lived on like sort of the working class part of town, and I went to school with kids on their 16th birthday got a Lexus for a birthday present. And here I was, very blessed, getting a hand-me-down 1984 Chevy Blazer, being like having this like sort of like, well, these kids that like have it so made. And, here I was, I had a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people that are my age, 39 years old, that don't even have an automobile and can't afford one, right? But everything is relative, especially when you're younger and you don't have perspective. So I was back at this bank in my hometown in the same suburb that I grew up in with this inferiority complex. And I had people coming to me that were my friends who had graduated from college, from Ivy League schools, from Yale and Harvard with their fancy new jobs. And I was there as a bank teller. I wasn't even valuable enough to be full-time. I was part-time, depositing their biweekly paycheck, right? So I was put back in this, this position with this mindset. So I just hated it. And I was complaining constantly to my dad at the time. My mother had passed away already at this point. And he said, why don't you get your real estate license? I'm not going to give you any business, but I'll show you the ropes on how to build a business. And so I leapt at the opportunity. I would have eaten a poop sandwich if it took to avoid having to go back to Chase Bank in the village of Pittsford. So that really sort of started my entrepreneurial journey of, it's like you're still trading your time for dollars, but it's a completely, unpredictable stream of income. I ended up, getting about $16,000 in commission checks by selling really low value property. You had to sell a lot of properties in order to, a lot of $40,000 properties to make $16,000, right? And my dad was like, hey, you had some closings. It wasn't my dream to have an adult child living with me at home, so you have until the end of the year to get an apartment with your friends or to buy your own place. So I liked the idea of not paying rent. So he gave me the idea of buying a multifamily property. So I bought a multifamily property, owner occupied one of the units, and I closed on that property in the middle of the month. It was like January, and magically on February 1st, I had $1,800 in rent checks sitting in my mailbox. So this is where I said I got like bit by the bug and really appreciating, the theme of passive or passive-ish income. And this dream of mine that I wanted to be financially free by the time I was 40 years old to basically eliminate that, that sort of horror that I had as my parents growing up, trading their time for dollars, having all this financial hardship and struggle in the process, that was going to be my ticket to scale from there. So I started focusing on buying more multifamily property. I kind of became expert in creative finance and that sort of thing. I really wasn't having too much of a sense of urgency at doing so. And then my dad passed away suddenly in his sleep. This was God or the universe smacking me in the face again, saying that you have to develop that sense of urgency if you really want to witness that dream and be part of that dream of becoming financially independent, so you can avoid all the stuff that your parents did. So that was really like my strong why was the death of my parents. And then I just went gangbusters from there. So over the next 8 years, I bought every single multifamily property in sight to get towards this goal. And by 33 years old, I was able to acquire enough doors, enough cash flow to be able to not have to trade my time for dollars anymore. So that was another major point of reinvention in myself, because I had this thing that I was obsessed with over 11-year period of being financially independent, and I got there, and I thought I was going to be euphoric. I wasn't. I got depressed because this thing I was obsessed over for all these years had come to reality, and I really didn't think I had a long enough vision or a big enough vision for something for me to grow into to go from there. So it was a major painful process of having to reinvent myself at that point in time. But since then, I started investing in myself in terms of reading more mindset books and that sort of thing. I read the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, and that kind of like respun me up. And I started thinking bigger about my business, started focusing on acquiring larger commercial property, because I had my wife to consider too. She was a school teacher teaching high school math, and my dream of backpacking through Europe for 2 months was not going to be a thing with her being stuck in a classroom. So I had to think about what that was going to take. And I always knew I wanted to do commercial property. So, but I never had the courage, and I had all these limiting beliefs preventing me from doing that. So that's when I made the jump. I bought one commercial property that I didn't have money for, so I had to raise capital for that. And that one deal, full circle, replaced my wife's income with that one deal, and added about $500,000 to her net worth. So I was like, okay, this is my new path. So I've been scaling from there. And since I've become financially independent, my mission now is to help people avoid all of the stuff that I went through over the past 17 years, not just business wise, but personal wise. So that's what I've been focused on now.
Man, thank you so much, Matt, for sharing that. And I appreciate you opening up, especially losing your parents at a young age. I'm sorry to hear that, man. And that one thing that I've seen from kids, at least, whenever they have hardship early on in their life, oftentimes, especially when they're teens, but even in your case, in your 20s, you kind of wake up and say, oh, wow, this life is serious. And so you don't have those people that were always in your life, you don't have that anymore. And so it makes you kind of grow up quicker. And so it can feel like a crap sandwich when you're first going through it, and you kind of just went through that and just said it kind of quickly. But that's a 10-year process where there's a lot of pain. And so that's a pretty serious thing. So I appreciate you opening up about that. And also just so many people that I talk to, they want that financial independence. Right? They have the day job, they don't want to be there, or maybe they kind of like their job and they're okay with it, but they'd rather do their own thing. And so they think, okay, if I get $20K a month passive income, I'm good. That's $240,000 a year, and I can just do what I want when I want with who I want. And like you said, I'll be euphoric, and it doesn't happen. So I'm really, really grateful, honestly, that you're on the show to talk about that and share that experience, because I hope that can make people take a double take on their goals and think, okay, is this goal really what I want? Is that really going to make me happy? And so, yeah, I love that. And one strategy that I've used, and you might have heard of this, Matt, but it's the asking yourself why 7 times. And I've done that exercise where if you have a goal, I want to be financially independent, I want $20K a month, whatever it is, and say, okay, why do I want that? Okay, well, because my parents never had money. Okay, well, why is that important to me? And so you ask yourself that usually between 7 and 11 times, and you come up with this revelation, and it can take days. It's taken me days sometimes to actually get the end result. But once you get to that end result, it's like taking shutters off your eyes. And it's like, whoa, that's life-changing to actually understand why I want that, and can help you get to the root, and hopefully save you like 5 years of going after something that you don't truly want. So anyway, but I'd love to talk about kind of once you got to that, you're 33, you're quote-unquote retired, what's next? How do you get out of that depressed mindset?
I think that, we all go through funks, right? We all go through dry spells in our business, and it's going to affect us mentally. Nobody is made out of steel. Everybody's going to have some sort of breaking point. And I think that when you reach that, or you're feeling uninspired, or you feel like you're going through the motions, is really a time, you should be investing in yourself continually. But that's really the point in time where you're like, okay, I need to invest in myself. Either intellectually or spiritually or whatever. That's really what was able to pull me out of that, to get re-inspired, to develop a new vision, and start to think differently. And I'll admit, I'm not a voracious reader. I don't read a book a week or anything like that. I really do it when I feel like I need something, right? Or I feel like I need alignment. So that's always helped me in the process when I've been feeling in a funk.
Yeah, I love that. And some people are voracious readers, and that's okay. But I think it's also really important, like you said, Matt, to be kind of in tune with yourself, right? So whenever you feel like, okay, I need something, there's something missing, searching for it. And so if you can kind of be sensitive to that, I think that's really powerful. And Matt, so what were some of the things that you actually did? So I know you started reading. What was the revelation for you? So you're kind of in this depressed mentality, upset, I financially set, but I'm not happy. What did you realize that actually made you happy?
I think that I was able to, take a step back, right? Because I was grinding for 11 years, and this allowed me that time in terms of breathing room to really, put my own life in perspective. And we all need to do this more often. We don't have to wait till we get to some type of, breaking point and that sort of thing. Taking that time to just sort of like take a step back and look at your own life, and also being mindful of when you're feeling certain things and when you're thinking certain things and having negative self-talk, ask your question, like, why am I thinking like this, right? Taking a look at, what your own thoughts are, right? And why you're thinking those types of things. It gave me the time to do that because I was just, go full speed ahead and really not, completely had my blinders on and really not really understanding or thinking about what the next step was. And so I think that was what really helped me. And I think that, thinking about, I also read a book that was really impactful on my life, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And that was one as well where at least the theme that I pulled out of it is that the bad things that happen in your life are the most valuable things. So that because the death of my parents wasn't the only sort of, death and health things that happened in my family. There was many others that happened, from there. But understanding that, when you're going through something very difficult, something that's crushingly brutal, that this is your opportunity for growth and is some of the most valuable experiences you will have. And I think that it takes that mindset and perspective to help you get through it, because we all go through difficult things, whether they're in our business or personally. But you have to know that while you're going through the crucible, that you're going to wind up stronger and wiser on the other end.
Yeah, I love that. Now, Matt, what are some things? I think everyone's different with this, but what are some things whenever you personally maybe start having some negative thoughts or you're starting to get down and out on yourself? How do you get out of that?
I have to stop. I have to take a walk through a park with my family or even by myself. Going on through a walk in the woods. Eliminating those, it's very easy to get distracted these days with, social media and how connected we are. So just turning those things off and sitting with your thoughts. A lot of times people talk about, meditation like it's like this really woo-woo type of thing. But meditation for me is just eliminating all those distractions and not having any source of stimuli that's out there, that, it doesn't have to be a long time. It is difficult when you first start doing it, even for 5 minutes, it was very difficult for me. But if you can just exercise that mindfulness, I don't call it meditation, but I call it mindfulness, that is really helpful in terms of helping, bringing those things into perspective and find a new alignment and inspiration.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's different for everybody. And for me, at least, whenever I overthink things pretty easily. And so for me, what I need to do is just praise God, ultimately, because the way our mind works is we can't do two things at once. Like if you ever try to make a box with your right hand and then try to make a circle with your left, like you just can't, you're doing two circles or two squares at the same time, it's one or the other. So if I'm in that negative state of mind and if I worship instead, then I can't be negative. It just doesn't work. And so that's what I do, at least. And everyone's different, but that's what's worked for me. Now, Matt, let's say there are people that are listening to this and they do want financial freedom. They're on that path. And I'm not discounting, I feel like we've kind of crapped on being financially free on this show, which is not the case, right? You should be able, it says in the Bible that you need to take care of your family. And if someone doesn't take care of their family, then they're actually worse than an unbeliever. And so that's still very important. At the same time, it can't be our idol, right? So let's say people, though, they're chasing that, right? They do want the financial freedom. What do you kind of say to those people to either maybe change direction, maybe still stay on the course, or do you kind of share something else with them?
Yeah, I think that I used to be very transactional when I was a young adult. Quid pro quo. I do this, you do that for me, and if you don't do that for me, then you're persona non grata in my life. I think that when I started thinking about things from a relationship standpoint, and adding value, right? Instead of thinking like, what am I going to get out of this? It's like, what type of value can I give to somebody else or the universe with no expectation of anything in return? I think is one of the things that I think that is getting aligned with that. It is counterintuitive because, we're all trained in terms of trading our time for dollars. We're trading constantly. We're not just giving and giving and giving. So if you can reorient yourself and saying like, okay, how can I leverage my experience and wisdom and what I bring to the table in the cosmic sense of things, and utilizing that, I think is really what is the major shift that happened for me in switching out of that transactional type of thinking to relationship based thinking, because I do believe that there's two things, right? Jesus talks about the concept of everlasting life, and I think that there's two different things that some people think like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and do what my church tells me to do because I want to have everlasting life after life. I think that we can create the kingdom of heaven on earth if we think, what can we do on the celestial plane to uphold the teachings of Jesus and his fulfillment of the Mosaic prophecy, for instance, and what can we do on this earth right now today to create that, because we can make a better world by being selfless and thinking about how can we create value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I just read in Matthew where Jesus was talking about washing the disciples' feet, and he that is greater, or he is that, I can't think of it, I'm blanking, but if you want to be first, just be last, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason he was talking about that was because James and John, Zebedee's kids, came to him and say, hey, Jesus, we want to sit on your left and on your right in heaven. And this is, of course, a couple chapters earlier, Jesus was just telling them that, hey, if you want to be first in the kingdom of heaven, you need to be like a kid, humble, humility. And so often, the thing that most separates like us brothers is ambition, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying that ambition is bad. We still need to be diligent in our work. But at the same time, is that people, we can always just butt heads against each other. And being competitive is great, again, and all that. You have to have that to some degree. But what's more important, Matt, like you said, is just being humble and being a servant leader. That's more important.
Yeah, and there's no better way to be humble than owning your own business, for instance, because you as the owner are the one that typically eats last. And I think that that's where I'm not the best business owner in the entire world, but I think that I can uphold the values that I believe in terms of that giving first with no expectation of anything in return, and eating last, because that's the thing is like the spiritual journey of entrepreneurship, for instance, is you're going to go through times where everybody else is getting paid except you. And having that temperament and knowing that, hey, if I am truly giving value and giving myself, that I will be rewarded eventually in some mysterious way.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, Matt, we're going to unfortunately start wrapping this up. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And before we start wrapping it up, I just want to thank you for being here, man, just blessing us with your time. I know you're a busy guy. So, and sharing your story, just being honest, I just really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Caleb. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Matt, the first question that I'll ask you is, what book would you recommend to our listeners?
I referenced it earlier on, but I think The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho is one of the most impactful books in my life. That's where I really understood that the success is not a destination. Success is a process and a journey, and it is the pursuit of your maximum human potential. And a lot of times you're going to be going through things that don't seem to be relevant to your goal, but knowing that your treasure is probably buried in your own backyard, and take that whatever it means to you. But also understanding that my treasure is my family, for instance, and the people that I love and care about. And so that book really put things into perspective for me.
I love it. I actually have not read that book, which I feel like after this show, I feel like it's a sin that I need to read it for sure. And the second question,
it's a short read. You can finish it in a day.
Oh, really? Oh, awesome. That's even better. Well, Matt, the second question is, if people want to learn more about you, man, maybe work with you, where's the best place that they can do that at?
I'm on all of the platforms, that sort of thing. I'm most active on Facebook, so you can reach out to me there. If you're not a social media person, but you're more of a professional person, that sort of thing, I'm also active on LinkedIn. But you can really find me anywhere. I've learned from Grant Cardone to be as omnipresent as possible. So I'm willing to help anybody along their journey. Whether it's from a personal standpoint, if you're going through some type of tragedy in your life, I can help put that in perspective through sharing my own experience and how I process that, or even professionally as well through your own business ventures too.
And Matt, the final question is, if you can share one final thing with our listeners that they can take away from today's show, what would that be?
You have to learn how to find treasure in the bad things that happen in your life. And I think that, that personally, business-wise, you're going to be so much stronger on the other side of this. And you just have to get through it and keep perspective and try not to drive yourself insane. Most of the things you're doing are not going to, you're not going to be mortally wounded or anything like that. And I think you just have to keep going and keeping your head down, knowing that you'll be stronger on the other end.
I love it. Amen. Well, Matt, thanks again for being here, man. Really enjoy the time. And to the listeners who tuned in, I appreciate you spending some time out of your day to listen. And so we'll catch you on next time. Bye.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.